So let's move on. I wanted to just mention a couple of the MVPs we have here. Let me go to my slide. I threw up some names. I know, obviously, Adam and Brian, you guys are leading us here. I appreciate you. Based on some of the feedback, I also asked Mike and Gary to join us as well. And, there are several more MVPs and others. So as we get some more here, we'll post the slides. You guys can have some links to who these guys are and what their favorite things are. I stole these from the MMS from last year. Brian's was a little long, so I shortened it up. But
understood.
That's where we are. Yeah,
and I appreciate swapping our info out for Adam's. That's key.
Yeah, please leave all the URLs
Mark,
as is. Yes, those are great.
Mike, you get some mediocre of respect. So, congrats to you, good sir.
Nice. That's good.
Oh yeah, and sorry, Gary, I need to fix yours.
Yeah.
I was doing that kind of in a hurry. So
I
sorry.
just assumed you were using an MVP's name since I'm not an MVP.
Yeah.
You're a rock star.
Mike's got here at the house. My wife's Mexican. She can feed your Mexican food desires.
That's great.
Happy hour at Randall's. Okay. So I'll fix that. But for the record, that last item there for Gary Block was 100% accurate. That was on his slide for MMS and favorite things. So that's not me.
Did you put the question mark in there, Greg?
I don't think so. I think it was there, Gary, but I'll go look again.
Is that just dependent on the day?
Well, yeah.
There's condition.
All right.
It's actually a huge long condition tree. It's just it didn't fit.
Yeah. Is Brian on? I don't know if Brian's on or not. We'll keep him on mute.
It's how I get better hotel rooms for MMS.
Yeah.
And better wine.
Yeah. All right. So we did mention banter, didn't we? Yeah. So that's what we are.
And also, in addition to the folks you had listed there, I did spam the MVP distribution list with the meeting request earlier today as well. So we may have some other folks from the MVP community that may have joined in to help answer questions as well. So if you're out there, there's 100 people in the session now. So if you're there, just speak up when the time comes.
Please do. Yeah, I see Ryan and Steve, and I'll miss people if I try to go find them all right now. But definitely want you guys speaking up as we go. Appreciate it. All right. So quick on the survey results. I think I just hit refresh. Let's do it one more time. So thank you all for submitting. All right. So we asked about table topics, and this is a cool little thing that happens in Microsoft Forums. You can see here that 20% of the 21 people that responded put software updates as their first choice. 40% of those who responded said work from home as their first choice. So interesting, but good to see. So we got a little wait here to see what people are interested in. And this is where I always cringe. I'm going to open up these fill-in responses, and we'll see where this is.
Don't do it.
Yeah, Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know if we'll get there today, but Intune co-management, challenges of having users work from home with bandwidth, remote management of updates, etc. VPN. What are the best tools for endpoint administrators? Plugins, toolkits, blah, blah, blah. Security and compliance reporting, ATP, Intune, Windows security. Where to get started with cloud attached? Suit Jamas, is that what that is? Yeah, I did see that. I saw Twitter. Nobody mentioned anything about cat photos, and I thought that might be a popular thing since we saw a couple here recently. Maybe that'll show up in the Patch My PC intro or something like that. Yeah, and what's the deal with Brian and onesies? We'll see. I don't know if we'll get there either, but no. So that's that one. Let me go back.
Pressing issue of our time.
Yeah. Let me go look at this other one. So we only got about 6 responses on the work from home. So let's see what they are. And you know what? I'll probably just work to summarize these a little more, and then if we go into detail, we can talk about these, right? So what are your questions? Work from home, split tunnel. I did see a couple about those, and I know Mike, you and I talked about these, so definitely keep these in mind, guys, as we're talking through this. You know, like you guys are all aware, this is a new world, and used to maybe some companies were just one-offs for remotes, and now suddenly everybody is. So how do we manage that, stay secure, and hopefully keep a good user experience as well. So those are all good, very helpful. Let's see, what else? we'll get into tips working from home. We'll share those a little bit later here. And that's it. So I'll stop talking. I'll hand it over to Adam and Brian. You guys, I'll leave this up if you'd like until you need to share anything or whatever. Just let me know what you'd like for me to do or share. Otherwise, it's yours.
All right. Well, thanks, Greg. So just to kind of start on the working from home topic, just to throw this out there. So the other night, Brian and I randomly invited everyone on Twitter to come and jump in and join a Teams session. We called it Off the Cuff. I posted a link there in the chat if you're interested in checking that out. But we spent about an hour and a half rambling on about cloud management gateways, co-management, and VPN scenarios, and just talking about the merits of doing those things. Additionally, Rob York posted a blog on Tech Community the other day talking about how to set up your VPN clients with their own boundaries. And then I know that Mike Terrell also recently released a post on his blog, so miketerrell.net as well. So hey, Paul Winstanley jumped in as well. So anyway, that we've covered a lot of that, at least the technical side of the working from home stuff in that. But obviously, we're certainly happy to talk more about it if you've got some specifics that you'd like us to cover here as well. So just at least to start there. But if we go with the topic list, looks like folks are wanting to talk about software updates, and I know that Brian, that's his favorite thing in the whole world.
It really is.
So by throwing some stuff out in the chat, if you want to kind of give us some specifics of what you're interested in about software updates to kind of steer the conversation. But overall, I think Brian can probably just jump in anywhere there. So it looks like we're talking about feature update deployment, FUD. So that's a good one that we could start with.
Yeah. So feature update deployment, right? You guys actually, Adam and Steve Hoskins on their Intune training channel have a beautiful video kind of going over the over that feature. So if you want a more depth kind of interview of it, that's totally where I would start. Thanks, kids, for talking now. But the key about feature update deployment is it's an extension of Windows Update for Business in Intune. And let's just face it, I kind of hate WSYS. Like I think a lot of us have a love-hate relationship with WSYS. And if you're not doing a lot of servers, right? If you've moved on to Windows 10, as Lord knows, I hope you all have, and there's really not a lot to do in terms of software update choices, right? Like you're down to cumulative updates for everything, which is glorious. I love that. You can argue with me if you want about cumulative updates, but I'm a huge cumulative update fan. And when you get to Windows 10, the concept of choosing what patches you're going to deploy it doesn't make any sense anymore. If you're not going to deploy a cumulative update, then what that means is you're never going to update again, right? So if you're like, well, this update breaks something, it means you're never updating again, full stop, on that device. So why have this super complicated update mechanism if you really don't need that if you don't need that level of control anymore? And so that's what I love about Intune. And I actually legitimately liked Windows Update for Business. Like I'm like, this is great. It makes sense. But again, it makes sense in a very specific scenario, which is Windows 10. If you have servers, not going to help you. If you're doing Windows 7 extended software updates, also, I don't know that it's going to help you. But one of the problems with going to Windows Update for Business is it's not just your monthly cumulative updates or what they like to call quality updates. It's also the feature updates, or what I like to call FUs.
And I think we all feel that way, Brian.
Again, I love when I first I emailed the team a little bit about this feature update deployment. They call it feature update deployment. I'm like, are you really going to use FUD? Like you're going to use it as your acronym, and they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, if you don't know what FUD means, then I don't know that I should be the one to explain it to you.
Nice, John. FUCU. There you go. And there we go. Down the rabbit hole now. So for, as Brian's talking, I have opened up the admin center, the MIM admin center, and in there you can see the Windows 10 feature updates preview node there, and so that is what we're talking about there on at least what's coming, what's being tested currently for feature updates in Intune, and it's essentially letting you lock specific rings of users, groups of users or devices into a specific feature update version. And because previously, if you were doing trying to do your security updates in Intune, you were at the mercy of the update rings, and you just had to say, well, I'm going to defer for a certain period of time, depending on your release ring, but you were still going to get the feature update at some point. And so now this way you can granularly target specific groups with specific feature updates and leave them at that max feature update level until you as a company are comfortable moving forward with that.
Yeah, and you know what, like I think initially it was a lower number, but they eventually kind of caved in and let you defer it up to like 360 days, or is it 365? I get like they would let you defer the feature updates with Windows Update for Business pretty long, right? And I think in their minds are like, that should be enough, right? Well, you know, then they changed the sort of cadence of how long they were going to let a release be supported, and I think we're now up to like 30 months on the fall or spring release. Off the top of my head, I forget which one it is. Someone in the chat will correct me, I'm sure. Well, people want to skip a release, right? They're like, well, what if we want to skip a release? Well, you can't do that in Windows Update for Business. But the bigger thing that kind of annoyed me about this is with quality updates, you kind of, I know Patch Tuesday's a lie, and I say that a lot, but like generally speaking, you kind of like in your mind, you have a framework of, well, once a month it's going to be released, and it's going to be the second Tuesday of the month, and I can kind of work, based on that to figure out roughly, hey, I'm going to deploy updates on this Monday or whatever. Well, feature updates, FUs are just deploying whatever the heck they want, right? It's really hard to plan on. I don't know when they're deploying it, which means like if I delay by X number of days, is that like a Sunday, right? Like, am I going to suddenly FUs are going to start showing up and apply to boxes on a Sunday? Like, I just don't like that experience. And so go to the feature update and click edit there, Adam, if you go to one of those rings. So here they're saying, okay, great. We're going to let you, target, you're going to assign these to a group of devices, click on the deployment settings. But the key thing is, and I just want to show that drop down, right? So you can pick a very specific version, a very specific FU, and say, this is the one that this group of devices are going to stay on. Now, I'd love to see, and I've given the feedback, like, this is great. Like, I love this because I think it removes a huge barrier, but there's no scheduling. There's no real great scheduling here either, right? Like the moment you set this policy, that means, okay, like it's available, right? So you hit save, in theory, within minutes, those clients, if they go and refresh, they're gonna see that version, right? So I'd love to see a little bit more scheduling in here. But even so, I think it's a huge barrier removed to split these out. And I'm really excited. Like, for me,
they're heading in the right direction. It ultimately is the message here, is that this is a first step in heading down this path and making it more enterprise friendly to manage feature updates from Intune. And so I think it's a great thing. Now, it doesn't handle that, Mike Terrell, this is totally up your alley. It doesn't handle all of the challenges that you were faced with like third-party disk encryption and things like that, and being able to, I mean, that's still the challenge that we're faced with in many enterprises that are still having to deal with task sequences and other things like that. I mean, this is still a challenge where things get broke or can't happen because of other things existing on the machine when you try to do a feature update. But I think we're definitely heading in the right direction. It's, we'll still have to wait and see how well this actually pans out and how used it becomes. So let's jump off of feature updates for a minute, and let's talk about, well, Mike, you showed your camera, so if you want to jump in and throw your hat in the ring, certainly can.
Throw your hoodie in the ring.
But you are muted though, Mike. If you
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah,
Okay.
no, mute. That's my number one tip for working from home.
Yes.
You know, teach people how to use the mute button, because you end up getting a lot of background noise, and then people can't hear the presenter or this or that. But no, definitely from feature updates, you know, things are looking good of where it's heading. But like you said, there's still some certain challenges in terms of, you know, being able to cache content ahead of time, or do pre and post stuff, which if you work in a very complex environment that is highly secure, like I do, you have challenges there as well, like you mentioned. So
Yeah, definitely not for every, like, I mean, it's still, it removes a barrier, but it's still not going to be for everyone, right? Like, there's just no way.
Yep, definitely. So another thing that we have in the chat is talking about. So one, I'll just touch on this one. So as far as the Intune piece goes, so Jay Williams says the update ring status can be misleading. Just because the policy landed successfully doesn't mean that the update was actually successful. And that's definitely feedback that we've been giving to the product group on just the general reporting capabilities. Like, look, guys, you know, you're giving us all these tools, but we have no way to verify, and that's really kind of where we're at on this stuff. Is, look, unless we have visibility into what's going on a per device level, this is really hard to really jump in with both feet and trust that this is actually occurring. And so I think that they are coming to the table with some better reporting capabilities. We're already seeing some of that show up. And by the way, so I mentioned I've got the admin center open. So this is aka.ms/dmac or devicemanagement.microsoft.com. This gets you to the admin center, and this will be different, and even a different layout, and you will see different things between this and the straight portal.azure and going to the Intune blade. So definitely get used to switching between those and looking at the different features as they show up, because even just being able to look at the reporting capabilities and stuff, I think that on the admin center, it looks a lot nicer. It's easier to, they're putting more things, they're putting their efforts into the admin center. So definitely use that as you're looking at Intune.
Yeah, and for reporting, the big kind of feedback I try to give them is, I think from their perspective, it's like, well, you know what, we're reporting what build version the OS is on, right? So that's all you need to know. And I know, right? And it's like, okay, I kind of get it. I kind of get what you're laying down, but you know, how many of us have? It's not, cumulative updates for the operating system aren't the only updates that exist. They're not necessarily the only important updates in your environment, right? Like numerous times in my career, I've been said, you know, security's come to me and said, hey, this add a band update, and it's for like a .NET update or something, or one of those, you know, firmware, or for Intel, you know, some of that stuff that happened in WannaCry, like they like tell me that that's there. And I've put that to the team, and they're like, yeah, it's just not there. Like, it's not in here. There's no report that I can say, tell me that this .NET cumulative update, what the compliance is. And it's like, it's just not there.
Yep. And so Gary, you can actually speak if you want. So Gary's asked the question. I know you're just seeding us with questions. That's great. So would you use desktop analytics for reporting? And not really. Somewhat. You'd use it for your feature update reporting, but it's still not going to help you with your overall reporting from, like you're saying, Brian, on other things in your environment and stuff.
The answer I've kind of gotten back from them, to the extent I've gotten answers, well, you know, like that's where Defender ATP comes in, right? Like if you're concerned about a vulnerability, you know, we got tools that'll do that for you, right? If you're concerned about just vulnerability X, like we can tell you that info. But not everybody, you know, that's like saying everyone just needs to get E5. Right?
Well, I mean, they should, but you know,
well, true or false, it's not, you know,
right.
It's not necessarily going to happen, right? And so if you're in Intune and you're not an E5 user, how do you solve that problem? And I just don't think there's a great story there, and I'd like for them to fix that.
So another thing that got brought up in the chat here is Tech Preview 2002, so 2002 really, is showing us. Am I still sharing my desktop?
Yeah,
I'm not sharing the right one though. Hold on.
Oh.
I chose to share a specific browser window. So here we go. Okay, so Tech Preview 2002 or 2002. Sorry, this is going to take forever to sort this out. But this is a great one of those battles that everyone has been fighting for a while now, and that's the servicing stack update software scan cycle post SSU, where I mean, like in our org, we basically say we have an ADR that says if we have a servicing stack update, get it and immediately deploy it to everyone right away. And then for every other patch for Patch Tuesday, then we space that out and deploy that on our different rings to, as we test it with different release groups. And so being able to now have an SSU that can can trigger or have the mechanism to trigger a software update scan after the software update or the SSU applies is amazing. That's, being able to sequence the updates so that they apply at the right time and that these do actually let you apply without having to do extra reboots inside your maintenance window. I think this is a huge win, especially when you're looking at like server patching and all that sort of stuff for sure.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say there is take a look at the last two sentences there, because it's an important caveat. Right now, it only uses in a non-user initiated install, which makes me a little bit sad, because my whole sort of thing about reboots, right, dealing with the reboot handling is get your users involved, right? Like you know how you don't get your users on board with understanding that, hey, patching is going to happen. Give them some time, but warn them the bejesus out of them, and so that they get on board saying, hey, I'm going to go to lunch, I'm going to go kick off patches. That's what I want to get my users to avoid the whole, hey, you forced this reboot on me, why? Well, but that doesn't, unfortunately, that does, in that scenario where the user initiates the install, it's not going to apply this logic, which makes me a little sad.
Yeah. So we've got a question in the chat from John Tracy. Do the CUs for IE and .NET need an SSU update, or is it just the CU for the OS?
So here's the thing, and this is where we split hairs, right? Need. So where a lot of this became to the forefront, and we really started talking about servicing stack updates, is when Microsoft released a servicing stack update in the middle of the month, because it's not considered a security update. So let's say in the middle of April, they released a servicing stack update, and they go to May's updates, the Patch Tuesday updates and their security updates, and those updates had a prerequisite on the previous month's servicing stack update. If you're on a monthly cadence, like most people are, that's what really screwed you, because you're not even going to see the cumulative updates until you get that servicing stack update installed, right? So in terms of needs, like that's the scenario we would absolutely, like, this is a huge problem, because you're not going to see the cumulative update until the SSU is installed. And I don't want to go into all the details of it's even worse than just that, but like it goes there. And so that's where I think this really, really helps, right? This is where it's really, really going to help. In the other scenario, that's pretty rare. It's only happened 3 or 4 times in the last 2-3 years where they've actually gone and done that, where that's a huge problem. The rest of the time, it's, well, we recommend you do the SSU first. And the reason for that is the SSU, the servicing stack, is the thing that services the OS, right? And so when you're updating the operating system, it's the servicing stack that you're using to actually apply the update. And so that's why they're trying to tell you to install the servicing stack update first, because it's the installer, right? So if you're going to install this month's patches, well, hey, guess what? We have an issue with the servicing stack that we're going to fix. So in theory, you want to fix that issue before you start installing your other things. So to get back to the question, right? Are CUs for IE necessary, or like, I've never seen IE,
or really for .NET, I think is really the one.
Well, either. I see.
Yeah.
Sorry, I see it down here too. Like, I have never seen them release a .NET or an IE update that has a prerequisite on the servicing stack update.
Yeah. All right. So let's. All right. Sorry.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you should just push those out anyway in general.
Well, yeah, you have to push them out. Absolutely. It's just like, it's just the order, right? Where does order matter? It really, really matters when it's a prereq. It can help you be more successful when it's not a prereq. Maybe that's the most succinct way I could say it.
Yep.
So I'm going to throw a curveball in here because, we're talking about patching systems, but it's good that a lot of people are now actually just servicing the install WIM using something like OSD Builder or WIMWitch. And it is absolutely critical that the SSU get applied before the LCU when you're actually servicing a WIM file.
Yes,
and
definitely.
There's another point too that comes with .NET patches, and I'm particularly not a .NET patch fan because we actually got bit by this last summer, and I think probably a lot of people got bit by it and didn't know it. Was you could slip in a .NET 4.8 patch on install WIM, even if .NET 4.8 wasn't applied to that WIM. And what the result was is you could no longer patch your .NET 4.7 machines. They didn't even show up as being applicable or needing patches. We found out about it through Qualiscans that said that these DLLs are out of date, and that was a huge mess. So just be super careful when you are servicing your WIMs, whether you're using OSD Builder, WIMWitch, or your own scripts, that you make sure that you only apply the .NET patch that's applicable to the WIM that you have.
That's a good point. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump over. I'm kind of going to skip the working from home stuff until the end here, I think.
You're saying that, but I think it's worth spending a couple of minutes here talking about. I mean, so rehashing in brief what we talked about in our session our impromptu thing, right? So let's talk about.
Okay, so let's jump back over to Greg. Greg, you said you were going to consolidate the working from home questions into something usable. Do we have? Are we there? Do you have some?
Let's do this. Just thinking through time because we have till 1:15. So I say at 1 o'clock we switch to talk about work from home for the last 15 minutes. You guys good with that?
That sounds great to me.
Okay, I'll have it compiled. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Okay, so operating system deployment. So we've got two of the arguably the two of the best OSD guys in the industry, Mike Terrell and Gary Block, on the call with us here. So what do you specifically want to know about OSD as we go through this? And also Donna Ryan, she's in the chat answering questions, and she's going to be talking about WIMWitch later on how to do all of your servicing. So I mean, do you have anything specific you want to know about OSD? I kind of want to start and just talk about at least my enterprise strategy on OSD at this stage. So we were slow on getting to Windows 10. We just finished our Windows 10 migration just late 2019, and we chose to do in-place upgrades for about 50% of our estate, and it all worked. I mean, we don't have a hugely complex environment where we were struggling. And so it was one of those things where we decided, let's give it a shot and let's go for it, and it worked. And so we were excited about that. But so now we are transitioning from 7 to 10 with in-place upgrades to now just 10 to 10 and keeping the lights on and that sort of stuff. So like for me at this stage, I am taking my task sequencing, gutting it, and rebuilding to streamline to take out all of the custom junk that we did to help us with our Windows 7 stuff. And now I'm ripping all that stuff out and putting it, making it so that we can support essentially bare metal 10 to 10, and then relying on the config manager servicing to do our feature updates. And so we're not using a task sequence to do our 10 to 10. So we're just pushing those out just like security updates and doing our feature updates there. I've got multiple blogs on the solutions that we put in place there. It's not just a straightforward like, oh, just push these things out necessarily. There are definitely some things to consider there on your setup config INI file and all those sorts of things on making sure that that stuff will work. But so that's been my strategy, is just to continually strip out all the customizations and streamline our task sequence so that it just supports doing bare metal or replacements for Windows 10, and then using the feature updates for just the native servicing for feature updates, and not having to wrap that into my task sequence. And the other thing is we just use a single task sequence for all of our build types. It detects the way that you launched it and where you launched it from, that kind of deal, and we can kind of tell what you the type of build we needed to do there. So anyway, that's our environment. It's pretty straightforward and simple, but we still have a fair amount of custom stuff and custom web service and other things that are helping us out with that. But from looking at it from a client perspective, looking at what other, so I do consulting as well, and so looking at what they're doing in their environments, it doesn't have to be super complex. I mean, most of the clients are just looking to get their machines on the right version of Windows and keep them current. Not a lot of heavy customization, not a lot of weird stuff going on with them. They really just want to get some version of Windows stamped on that box and keep them up to date. And so for most of that, it's taking the built-in task sequence wizard and using that as a template to start from, and then building from there, building on the components that you need. It's not that straightforward of just taking that and using it. I mean, there's still a fair amount of customization that you need to do to make it work nicely and more streamlined and stuff. But I've had clients where I've gone in and that's all they've done is just use task sequence, and it's working for them. So with Gary and Mike on the line, knowing that, I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen somebody do so many things with a task sequence that Gary has done. It's phenomenal, and yet a lot of folks don't need really any of that to to get the OS deployed to their clients in the way that they need it. But knowing that you can do all of those things and seeing all the options and seeing all the stuff that Gary has shared with the community, I mean, I know tons of folks that go in there and grab bits and pieces of his code because it just saves us so much time knowing, hey, Gary's already got all this working for us. So anyway, that's my rant about OSD stuff. So I'll hand it over to you guys to say what you'd like.
Yeah, I just also wanted to point out how important it is to keep your CM infrastructure updated. 1910 brought some really important fixes for in-place upgrade. There, you could get around it in the past, but they take things that were a lot of pain and they just integrated in natively. The setup update complete variable to add time in between the point where it's coming out of the in-place upgrade and kicking back over the task sequence. We had a lot of failures because of that, and adding in a couple minute wait time resolved a lot of it. And the issue was on older hardware, or especially on VDIs, during the in-place upgrade, it has to migrate all of your WMI stack over, and what would happen is the task sequence would try to pick up, and it hadn't actually migrated your WMI for config manager yet. So then I couldn't find it, and it would bomb out of the task sequence. But just by putting like a 3 or 4 minute pause in on really bad hardware, it resolved that issue, and it would pick up because it had what it needed. And then also they fixed the rollback feature for the last several versions of Windows and, well, CM. The rollback feature actually didn't work. Back in, I think it was 1703, they changed something in Windows. But basically what would happen is there's that rollback complete command file that's supposed to get triggered. That actually never got triggered. And then when they fixed that part, it was getting triggered in user context. So a task sequence would see that and like, I can't kick off because I'm in user context, not in system context. So in 1910, they actually made it so that would trigger by default in the system context. So it would trigger that. And in Windows, in 1809, they fixed it with dynamic updates. So the initial 1809 release didn't work. So you have to use slipstreamed in dynamic updates, or 1903 and newer out of box work with that. But those are things that were big pain points for us that they've fixed natively by just staying current.
Yeah, and I would probably say that you and Mike probably even helped drive the product team to implementing at least some of these features.
Yeah, I reported the bug initially to them, and then when they didn't believe me, I reproduced it, and then finally got engineers at Microsoft to reproduce the bugs, and then they're like, okay, it's an issue.
Yeah, we all thank you for you offering your clients as sacrifice to the greater good. Really appreciate it, buddy.
We just have a few, so it's not a problem.
Yeah, so we originally found that because I had this wild idea, which happens all the time, and then Gary just shakes his head. But I was like, man, this ability to revert back the OS would help us out drastically, right, in the enterprise space, because I think the Windows team has done a phenomenal job, and I made a comment to Suma in a meeting I had at Microsoft like a year and a half ago, that she actually commented in her Ignite session this year. But I said that's like one of the best features because it is bulletproof. I mean, you can just revert an OS back and boom, you're back in 3 to 5 minutes. It's amazing. So I presented on the kind of conceptual theory at MMS Desert Edition last year. Well, and then we got into testing it, and we're just like, well, we'll just add hooks into this, this setup rollback.cmd. And then Gary's like, yeah, it doesn't work. And so that's kind of the story behind that. But yeah, the OS uninstall for us has been great. We plan on pushing that for WAS 1909. We're really going to try to shift to a self-service type model to do it on, end users, let them pick what time is convenient for them to do it. Because we've seen pretty good participation in just our opt-in rates. Despite what our IT department says, right? I think Niehaus was making a comment in our MVP roundtable thing this morning about how users are more willing to get changed than IT departments are today, and I mean that's just a given fact. And I have to continually remind people that they're like, what do you mean a user has to go to this software center and then run something? And it's like, you have a smartphone, right? You go to the App Store or Google Play, right? It's like, isn't that how you get stuff today on your phone? Well, guess what? All your users have phones, right? This is really no different. It's just for the PC. So yeah, it's an amazing concept, actually.
And just talking about and I know it's not quite the same thing as the OS uninstall, but you mentioned bulletproof on just in general on the Windows setup. So we really felt comfortable doing our Windows 7 to Windows 10 upgrades because of just the rollback functionality. Just at least in our environment, it worked very well, and we felt like, yeah, this is pretty decent. Recently, I had a machine that was on, I don't know, it was 1809, and I was trying to get it to 1909, and I was doing feature update on it, and it kept rolling back every single time. And I was determined to figure out what the cause was, and I was working with the product group, had a ticket open and everything, and never could sort out what it was. But because I eventually cratered the machine, because I did something with the boot order or something, and it was gone. But in that process, there's some cool registry keys that I think Gary's got on his blog. I know that I've mentioned them. I don't know if I've got them on my blog or anything or not, but so there's some registry keys that get written under the HK local machine system setup keys, and there's one called Mo setup, and under Mo setup it will show you the number of times an OS install and uninstall have occurred, and I think I was up to about 30 before I finally blew the machine up. And it didn't blow up because of the feature update. It blew up because of something stupid I did trying. It was like every iteration I tried something else, like, okay, well, let me update these drivers or remove these drivers or do these things. And I did something stupid and just killed it. But it was a IT person's spare machine, and so I was able to. It wasn't a big deal for me to do it, but I was just trying to feel comfortable with feature updates and understand the rollback, because honestly, it's kind of difficult to force a failure to happen a lot of times with feature updates, and trying to, when you're just trying to understand the process and do some testing on it, like, well, how do I make it fail? And so I was, Anyway, it is nicely bulletproof, and every time that machine came back, the moment config manager checked back in, it immediately restarted the feature update. So I had to take it out of my forced update collection for the feature update, before it drove me nuts.
And the reason why we want to really push that model is because our number one pain point now with the Win 10 jumps that we've done has been apps that just don't survive the in-place upgrade. The upgrade proceeds, it upgrades to 1809 or 1709 or whatever it is, fine. User's app doesn't work anymore because it's probably poorly authored. It's either right into parts of the registry that don't get migrated, or using active setup, or needing some DLLs that need to be re-registered. So if we can kind of guarantee to the lines of business that, hey, go out, try it, and if your app breaks, you can go back in 3 to 5 minutes, and they're a little confused by that, because they're like, well, it just took 60 minutes for it to upgrade, and you're saying I can go back within 5 minutes, and it's like absolutely. So but that'll help us go forward faster, catch those apps that are missed, that the product owners don't do proper testing on, that kind of thing. So.
And someone's asking in the chat about doing desktop analytics, and yes. So and for us, yes, and I know for Mike, at least last time we chatted, no for you guys, but we were using the upgrade readiness portal before they switched over to desktop analytics. So we used that to help us get from 7 to 10, and then we started using DA for 1809 to 1903, I think, and now to 1909. And it works. We have been able to use that to target only machines that have compatible applications that are ready to go. Now, it's not just this panacea where it's like, oh yeah, it just tells you everything and works. There is some work required, but it provides you all the data, and it provides the tool set to be able to flag apps as needing to be tested, or we've already tested this and this is good to go, and that sort of thing, especially for your more business critical apps. And they're still continuing to make improvements to DA. And but yes, if you can use it, I definitely recommend using DA, because it really does help. I mean, up until this point, we would spend a year testing applications on the OS before we felt comfortable starting to roll out. And now we've just kind of said, no, we're good. Let's just go. If DA says we're good, let's push out to those pilot machines that are in that bucket and see how it goes. And so far, it has been very trustworthy and dependable for us.
One question here was, how do we manage feature update failures in general? So for us, just because of our size, we typically will allow it 3 fails before we even look at it, unless we have found, like, we do run setup diag on every failure and actually every success as well. But then based upon the setup diag code, if we know it's one that it's never going to upgrade, even if it tries again by itself, we can just flag it then for review for someone to come around. And then we have reports. So then we'll have support staff try triaging those with the certain codes, and then after 3 times they start digging in a little bit more as well. But typically we just try to shotgun it a few times, just because we found that due to our environment, like a file could have been on lock or something, and then just trying it the next time, it will get past that same point without an issue. And someone else asked about pending updates or pending reboot. So during our task sequence, we actually have recorded when there's a pending reboot, and we haven't been able to determine a correlation between a failure and a pending reboot. But if you have seen that, you could easily just have it trigger a restart if it finds a pending reboot. And if you really want to, you could actually even put an install software step. If you find that, you could do a query to see if you have pending updates, and then you could actually force the update to install, reboot it, and then continue on in your upgrade. So all that would be possible within a task sequence.
You could just do what I do and just add a reboot after every 5 steps or so, and it works.
Well, yeah. So a little inside dirt is we our company likes to reboot. It seems like my device wants to reboot every couple days. And that actually kind of burned us, was some of these what I would call out of band reboots or scheduled reboots, that we would see setup running and it would be going through, and then all of a sudden in the log it'd be like unexpected reboot, and we're like, WTF, like
Nice.
what's happening here? And so we actually started to do some prototyping. So there's not a really good way to see if there's one that's actually scheduled with like the shutdown command. So you actually just run the shutdown command with a /A. And if there's one scheduled, it'll be one return code. And if there's one not scheduled, then there'll be another return code. And we can trap it, and then we can cancel that shutdown at the beginning of our sequence to kind of prevent that. But yeah, I mean, when you work in an organization like ours, it's like you got all kinds of rogue IT wildcats out there doing stuff that just steps on our own toes, basically.
You guys have so many landmines in your org, it's hilarious.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this sounds like a botnet. Like, well, we need our bot to find their bot to make sure that we
Right.
don't.
Exactly.
We actually, during the upgrade, if it fails, we actually parse a lot of logs, and we would record and write to our reports if it was an unexpected reboot. And that was our number one failure during the upgrade, was unexpected reboots during phase 1.
Yeah,
That's horrible.
and to Gary's point on the 3 retries, so so I said we're doing servicing, right? So we just push it out like you do security updates. So it's just a regular deployment sitting out there, not a ton of telemetry going on there, but definitely just we would go in and look at the deployment and say, oh, hey, these machines have been sitting here in this failed state or whatever. And we'd look at it one day, and the next day we would look again, and those machines would have succeeded. And the best part about that, at least from our side of things, is that the users never really saw it was never a failure from the user's perspective. It was everything that we've seen has just been, yeah, it threw out a weird error code, but nobody's logged a ticket. You talk to the users, they didn't see anything weird, and so if people aren't making noise, we just kind of like, well, we'll focus on something else that's a bit more important than whether that one guy's machine worked. Because, for us, we would, get a list of, 50 machines that showed a failure, and like 3 of them would be online. It's like, well, okay, forget that. Let's you just end up wasting time trying to track that stuff down. And so for us, our major point of failure was we had about 4 machines that ended up continually rebooting after a 90-minute countdown, because the config manager client and WSUS weren't logging that the machine had completed its upgrade, and so it kept thinking it needed to do a restart, and so we just had a WMI fix there. It would just go reset client policies, and it would clear the problem and move on. So anyway, we've kind of gone through a bunch of stuff, and I think we're at the mark where Greg said we could talk about work from home stuff. And I think most of the other questions have been answered in the chat here. I think the offline servicing stuff, I guess right before we go to the work from home stuff, Greg, let me just ask. So those of you who have asked questions in the chat about OSD and offline servicing, have you gotten answers? Or if you still have a question, post it there, and we can cover that at the tail end if we've got any time after that.
Just make Donna do it.
Donna's been doing awesome here, but that means we're going to have to turn around and do this when she's speaking, I think, Brian.
That's right.
Yeah, make the promises.
All right, Greg, what do you got for us?
So let's show a couple more slides here, and we'll keep the conversation going, and definitely would like more interaction. You guys keep up the chat here. This is great. So yes, I tried to clean up the slide. Hopefully links are right. And Gary, maybe you and Brian actually have links to the right place now. Brian still likes pina coladas, just for the record.
Yeah.
But let's go on to the other exciting things here. So I compiled the information, and work from home, kind of party in the front, or sorry, party in the back, right? Business in the front. There's pros and cons, but but I tried to split this up. I thought we'd talk maybe tips first, and then we can talk challenges, because I think we'll spend more time there. And definitely, these are tips that people submitted. If we feel, if we need to converse and discuss these in more detail, please do. Right? I see this one that came in about VPN subnet-based collections to exclude from super peers is the best solution he's come up with so far from a business perspective. The second one here was basically creating chat rooms in Skype, right? Similar, you can do channels in Team, right, to keep people communicating, keeping people engaged. I do feel, from my perspective, being a work-at-home guy for a long time, video does help, right? It is good to actually see others' faces and see what their background and hoodie is for the day. So I think that's a good thing to do as well. And then, these things on the right-hand side, right? You do have to be comfortable. I know some of us, like I said, if you're working from home all the time, we probably bought a few more luxuries just because we're here all the time. A couple of decent sized monitors. I actually have a glass pad under my chair that works really well. I'll throw some links out there if anybody's interested. Glass. So, those plastic things on carpet don't roll very well, but those little creature comforts after a while, I think go a long way. And of course, somebody gave some feedback here from a personal perspective, right? Get up, move around. Definitely, everybody's work from home situation is different. You guys have probably seen the YouTube videos about the guys with the dogs barking and everything else. I've got one guy that has birds, and they make a lot of noise. I don't know how you ever get away from those things, because they don't quiet down at all. But everybody has their situation, and help each other, and hopefully we can all share better how to use these things. Let's see, in the comments, Donna, don't use a cheap chair if possible. I agree. All these ergonomic things we've heard for years, maybe we took for granted when we were in the office. If you sit down and crouch and look at a laptop, looking down all day, you're going to kill yourself as well. So take care to do those things. Definitely good comments coming in. You guys have other things you'd like to add here as well from a tips perspective?
I haven't actually been working yet, but from what I've heard from other people, it's the whole, like, I think part of it is you've got to have this mindset of this is work. My company is trusting me to work to come to work, and so let me work. Nice, Mike. Yes, mute when you go to the bathroom.
Yes.
So I mean, just for me, this past week, I've been doing an MVP Summit from home, and so I've been setting my alarm, waking up, taking a shower, getting dressed like I'm going to go to work. Maybe not as formally, putting on a t-shirt, but I was telling my wife about my schedule. She, so my kids are home off of school now, and so lots of distractions, lots of opportunity to say, "Hey, Dad." And I've just told her, here's my hours today. This is the time you need to leave me alone. I'll let you know if I can interact. And that's how I'm doing it. And so just treating it like, hey, I'm not here. This is not my home. This is my office. And but I mean, like Mike and Gary and Greg, I mean, you guys do this regularly, so I'm sure you guys have some great tips on how to be successful.
To me, it's definitely being engaged, right? While I'm rambling here for a second, I did throw the challenges on the screen. I think we should talk about VPN and split tunnel a bit, but definitely being engaged with people, being just aware. Depends all on your company, right, and where you are. Sometimes I feel like I'm on an island, and it's hard to really know, where everybody else is, and the water cooler talk, blah blah blah. But once you drive through those things and you're engaging with your teams, keeping that communication channel to me is the key. And yeah, being comfortable in where you're sitting all day, because and that can be a killer if you don't. So let's move on, because we just have like 5 minutes here. Mike, I know you've done some stuff in this space, and even there's a couple call outs specifically for some of the stuff around split tunnel. Do you want to talk a little bit about just your thoughts, how split tunnel can help? I even saw a couple chats here about VPN, split tunnel, saturation, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, actually, just two of my suggestions for working from home is get a good headset, and if you can't do a headset for a long period of time, also get a good speaker. I used to use a speakerphone until I ditched my landline, but I have a really nice Jabra speaker that's great. It sounds awesome. So those are important. One other thing is work-life balance. Just try to have boundaries. My typical boundary is I don't try to start before 7 a.m. Even if I have meetings show up on my calendar before 7 a.m. And try to have definitive lunches and stop times, because you can end up working more when you work from home, because you don't have the commute time to deal with. So I think it's great, and it's nice from a flexibility standpoint if your employer allows flexing. So, but yeah, so on to split tunneling. So I kind of wrote this blog the other night, and I hadn't blogged in a while, and Gary outblogs me probably like 10 to 1 these days because he's much younger. But there was a lot of stuff flying around, and this was something that actually we started looking at back in the beginning of the month, actually. We've had this on our radar for a long period of time because I think our traffic consumes probably 50% or more during patching weeks on the VPN. And if you guys saw our presentation at MEBUG last year, you know, we upgraded about 75,000 devices over VPN to 1809. So our VPN is pretty well saturated as it is, and you know, we've been pushing our security team to actually kind of get up to the year 2020 to allow us to do split tunneling. So you know, I'll caveat my blog is written from a perspective of somebody who has not done cloud management gateway. We know that's the future direction. That's Microsoft.
So Mike,
Mhm.
can you explain what is split tunnel? Because not everybody might know
Yep.
what that means.
Okay, so VPNs can be configured so that all traffic when the VPN connection is made routes to the VPN connection. So that could be internet traffic, so you're actually web surfing where you're actually going back into the corp net and then out to the internet instead of actually using your gateway at home. You know, so if you're downloading something or this or that and it's really slow, well, that's probably because it's going through several hops through your corp net and then out to the internet versus just going directly out to the internet through your fiber connection at home. So depending upon how your VPN team configures things, you can do what's called split tunneling. So only corporate related traffic actually goes back through the VPN tunnel, and then other traffic is allowed to just use your ISP gateway and go grab stuff directly. So Microsoft, the CM team has made this option available. This goes way back, actually, I think into 2012 days of where Configuration Manager could optionally return the Microsoft update or Windows update content location for a particular client to go grab that content. So if you do have devices that are not on CorpNet, they could take advantage of their internet connection and grab that content directly versus clogging up the VPN pipes. So the blog that I wrote is, you know, really dealing with people that haven't adopted the cloud management gateway strategy, because as you guys probably know, there's multiple ways to configure things in Configuration Manager. It's what we love about it, right? And it caters to many different scenarios because of that. So
Mike, have you looked into, like, I got pushback from people saying, well, split tunneling is insecure. And I kind of looked into it, and I kind of I kind of get it, but what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so that's one battle that we're dealing with right now. But you know, it's effectively the same patches that you're syncing to your SUP, right? Your SUP has, when you say right-click download, it's going to the same locations to download the same exact content. That content's signed. There's hash checks involved that the CM client does. So there's literally no possibility of a man-in-the-middle type attack. I mean, even if somebody were to do DNS poisoning or something like that and try to get you to download something from a malicious site, the CM client's going to do its hash check on it. It's going to check the signing, and it's going to toss it if it doesn't match. I know we're running short on time, and what I wanted to say, because we actually are implementing this internally, is your VPN tunnel can be very specific too. So just because your CM client is returning to go get this patch from Microsoft Update or Windows Update or any of those URLs that are out there, make sure that you test that traffic is not actually going back through the VPN tunnel and then out to Microsoft Update, because that defeats the whole point of it, right? So their routing tables in the VPN layer need to be set accordingly so that it is just going straight out.
Well, and I think so. Back to Brian's point about it being insecure. I mean, we talked about it a little bit in our video the other day. It was the idea that if your tunneling is the only thing keeping your desktops or your workstations secure, and that's your you got to have VPN up and got to tunnel back through here. I mean, you've missed it on the security front. There are other layers that you need to have in place on your workstation itself in order to protect it. Other than making sure that, I mean, like our users, they can turn off their VPN if they need to, because there's times where the VPN goes down or something's not working right. And if you can't turn it off, well, now what? Your users are dead in the water until VPN comes back up. So you need to definitely make sure that you've got, defense in depth, and you've got security that's more than just your traffic being tunneled back.
Yeah.
All right, so we are at time, Greg. So I mean, I think we've done our best to cover the topics. Thank you all for the.
I'm not sure what's our best, Adam. Was this really our best?
Well, it's the best you're getting today.
Yeah,
We'll try.
yeah, that's worse. Yeah,
It is
no,
Friday.
this is great, guys. Really appreciate it. I think this was a really fun, just conversation. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to send a survey at the end of our day today, and really want attendees' feedback. I would love to see us have more of this type of thing. I think maybe there's a happy hour involved here, right? And we can all just kind of chat about kind of the topics of the week or something. I think that could be interesting myself. So anyway, yeah, we'll send out that survey. We'd love your feedback. Really appreciate all you guys' time and all the other MVPs and everybody else that's contributing here. Really appreciate this. This is what I love about our community. You guys are all great. And it's just great we can help each other out this way.